So today we'll start a new chapter. We'll start a new chapter. So let me share my screen first. Okay. So share screen. So first let me share my screen. So can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right. So far what we did, let's see. So this is the heart of the Timebox, right? This is the heart of the Timebox, 6th edition. So far what we did, we actually completed this process, right? Develop project charter. Then what we did, we completed also identify stakeholder. And at the same time, we complete this whole knowledge area, project stakeholder management. All right. So now what we will do, we will actually start from here. Project scope management. Now we will follow the sequence of Timebox. We will first complete scope management, then schedule management, then cost management. All right. So now we will follow the sequence, and there will be no break. So if you see these chapters, project scope management, schedule management, cost management, and project quality management, these four chapters actually the key focus of every project we do. So these are the main focus area: project scope, project schedule or time, project cost, and also quality of the project. So these are the four key factors of project management. All right. And in the first or second class, I discussed about iron triangle, right? In iron triangle, we are actually in three arms of the triangle. In the first term, we mentioned that it is scope. This is time or schedule. And third one is cost, right? And in the middle, sometimes we write quality. So all these four are actually very close to each other. If you change the scope, ultimately you have to change the time or cost. It will have some impact on cost or time. If you change time, what will happen? It has impact on scope, cost, and also quality. That's why it is known as iron triangle or triple constraints. Because if you change any constraint, it has some kind of positive or negative impact on other constraints. So today we'll discuss about scope management. Chapter number 5, scope management. So let me share my presentation slides. So integration management. So this is the scope chapter. Let me open up the first page of this chapter. So this is a long chapter. This is a long chapter. Okay, so this is the chapter. Let me clear the drawings. Okay, so project scope management. So what is actually project scope management, or what is scope? What is scope? That you need to understand. What is scope? A scope is what of the project. What of the project is scope? What do we want to do from this project? What is our target? What will be the output? What will be the result? What will be the service after completing this project? That is the scope. Or sometimes we mention scope as requirements. What are the requirements of the business or of the customer or the user? For that, to achieve that scope, we are actually initiating the project. So the final output, that is actually scope. So before starting the project, we have to identify the detailed scope of the project. What of the project? What we are going to deliver? All right, what are we going to deliver from this project? That is the key focus of this project scope management. Okay, so and that this scope sometimes actually in the industry or in our profession, sometimes we use as requirement. So in Timebox, actually, we will see project scope is divided into two types. So one is project scope, and other is product scope. One is project scope, and other is product scope. And this chapter actually talking about requirements management. What are the requirements? We need to understand the requirements for the project, and we have to deliver the requirements. We have to deliver the output, service, or result to meet these requirements, conformance to requirements. So this is the purpose of the scope chapter, and this is actually chapter number 5 in Timebox, project scope management. And as I mentioned earlier, we will actually follow the sequence now. After scope management, we will see the schedule management, then cost management, and then quality management. All right. So, as usual, in each chapter, I start with a question. So, for this chapter, the question is one of the main reasons for project failure is what will be inside here?
Scope of the project.
Right. A scope is not defined properly. Okay. A scope, what is the boundary? What is the deliverable that is not defined properly? That is the main reason of project failure. So that's why this is a very, very important chapter, because if you cannot define the scope, you cannot actually define the schedule and also cannot define the cost. So based on your scope, you will get the schedule and you also understand, or you will get the cost and quality. So you have to clearly define your scope. And another main focus of this chapter is you have to define what is in the boundary of project and what is not in the project. That clear boundary you have to define in this scope chapter. What is inside the project and what is not inside the project. That boundary you have to define here. Otherwise you cannot actually close your project if you do not set the boundary of the expectation, requirements of your customer, of your stakeholder. So if you cannot set the boundary, then it is very difficult to deliver. And here actually I have mentioned 3 points. This is actually taken from Parts of the Profession 2018. PMI every year publish Parts of the Profession, surveying on different big projects, big budget projects, complex projects, global projects. And from there, what we find, see that the 3 leading ways organizations can save money and bring project success are investing in actively engaged executive sponsors, avoiding scope creep, and maturing value delivery capabilities. So if you want to make your project successful, then actually one of the findings is you have to avoid a scope creep. What is a scope creep? A scope creep means actually unapproved change. The change is not approved, but you are going to deliver that change. Or we have not defined the scope properly. That's why we are actually delivering and customers are not happy. So, and it is also seen last 5 years Parts of the Profession, last 5 years survey, it is found that this scope related issue was at the top 3 reasons of project failure. All right. So we have to understand this chapter for PMP exam and also for our practical project management. So let me give an overview of the processes in this knowledge area. So there are actually 6 processes. So we are seeing 4 process is under planning process group. And last 2 processes is under monitoring and controlling process group. All right. So in initiation, in execution, and in closing, there is no process in this knowledge area. All right. So total, how many processes here? How many processes here total?
Yes.
6 processes, right? So 4 in the planning and 2 in the monitoring and controlling process. Okay. So let me now explain the high level definition of all the processes, why these processes are required in scope management, and also the sequence of the processes. So generally, when we do practical project management, generally we follow these 4 sequentially. First, we need to plan scope management. What is plan scope management? The main thing or main purpose of plan scope management is how we will going to collect requirements, how we will going to define our scope, who will be involved, when we will do, what are the documents we will use, what will be the templates, right? So these things will be planned here in this document. So output of this process will be a scope management plan. So plan scope management is actually providing us framework guidance for doing this knowledge area, how we are going to execute other processes of this knowledge area. That planning we need to do here, plan scope management. Okay. After the planning, always please remember one thing. Timebox actually always suggests whenever you are going to do anything, before doing that, before starting to do that, you should plan for that work or that activity or that process. So following that guideline, before doing these processes, we are actually setting our plan for this knowledge area. How we are going to do the requirements collection, how we are going to define the scope, how we are going to break down the scope into WBS. WBS means work breakdown structure. I will discuss later in detail. And how we will validate the scope or take the acceptance from the customers and control scope. How, after the scope is defined, how we will control the scope. If there is any change related to scope happens, how we will actually manage that, control that. So as per Timebox guideline, if after baseline means approved copy of scope. So once the scope is approved by the customer or by the sponsor, if you want to change anything related to that scope, then you have to raise formal change request. All right. So in predictive project management, always we try to define our scope at the beginning of the project. And if any change comes when we are doing execution or monitoring closing, if we see any change is required, then actually we do the change with formal change request. All right. Okay, so after plan scope management, second process is collect requirements. All right. So that means we have to understand the expectation requirements of the stakeholders, what they are asking for, they are looking from this project. So that we need to understand, discussing with the stakeholders, analyzing the documents, analyzing the TOR or SOW or any contract document if you have. So analyzing all these things, we have to collect requirements. All right. So collect requirements. I have a question here for you all. So collect requirements. In this collect requirements, where from we actually get the requirements? Where from we will get the requirements? Who will give us the requirements?
Stakeholder?
Yes. So simple word is stakeholder. So stakeholders will provide us the requirements. So where will get the name of the stakeholders? Where will we get the list of the stakeholders? In which document?
Stakeholder registry.
Initiation.
Right. Initiation and What is the document name? Stakeholder
Registry.
register,
Register.
right? Stakeholder register. That means, and in the initiation process group, we did the process, identify stakeholders. So in that document, actually, we already identify all the stakeholders, their expectations, their requirements. So that document will now come into play. That's why if we don't do this, identify stakeholder process and don't capture or compile all the stakeholders' names, identifications, and also their requirement expectation, then actually you cannot start this collect requirement process. That's why we have to complete this. All right. So that's why also in the class I have actually jumped into chapter 13 so that you can understand the relation in practical project management. So after you have collected the requirements, where we'll put these requirements, we'll use use a new document. The name of the document is requirement documentation. I am writing in the abbreviation format, requirement documentation. That means talking with the stakeholders using by in meetings or any workshop or any other tool. We will see there are 16 tools we will discuss in collect requirements process. That tools we can use to collect the requirements, and after collect the requirements, where we'll put the requirements, we'll put the requirements in the requirement documentation. All right. So this process is done. Then define a scope. So in collect requirements, we are trying to collect as many as possible and all the requirements that stakeholders are providing us. But what is define scope? Define scope is, this is actually your project team's work. That means stakeholders will, in different language, they will tell a lot of things. But as an expert, project management team expert, project team expert, now you have to define those requirements and define the final scope for your project. All right. Say one stakeholder is saying one thing in a language, another same thing, another stakeholder is saying in different language. When you will sit together with your team, you will identify those things. If we can deliver this one thing, then actually it will satisfy 10 requirements of 10 different stakeholders. So that refinement we will do in define scope. Have you understand this? So in collect requirements, we are just collecting requirements, but in define scope, we are finalizing, defining the requirement, and that is known as define scope. So after defining the scope, we are putting this final scope, that is sometime in Bangladesh, in profession we say SOW, scope of work. So after refining all the requirements, we actually find out the SOW, or sometimes in contact, we use this term as TOR, terms of reference, what we need to deliver. So SOW or TOR, that we will define in define scope process. And after defining this, we will put all this in a separate document. The name of the document is project, I'm using the shortcut, project scope statement. Project scope statement. All right. So we are getting another document that is known as project scope statement. Now, this is the last planning process of this knowledge here at WBS. So in a scope statement will be a huge document. Based on the project, it can be 100 or 1,000 page document. The whole requirement will be put here. All right. So this scope statement, that actually we cannot deliver. What happens in the project? We cannot actually deliver the whole thing at a time. What we do, we actually break down the scope, right? We break down the scope in a smaller chunk so that we can easily manage and we can easily deliver. All right. So that breaking down the scope into small chunks, that is known as WBS, work breakdown structure. So scope WBS is nothing but the graphical presentation and breakdown in a smaller component or a smaller chunk of the whole work whole project scope statement. That is known as WBS. So after create WBS process, we will get a graphical presentation of the whole process in chunk or in a smaller component, and that is known as WBS, work breakdown structure. All right. So what we get here, we have got requirement documentation. Next process, we have got project scope statement, and finally we have got WBS. And with this, you will get another separate document. I will explain when I will discuss create WBS. That is known as WBS dictionary. Just remember the name, WBS dictionary. So after getting all this, now our scope is finalized. So after writing all these documents, we will present this document to our management. And if management gives approval, then we say that our scope is baselined. Please, what I am saying, baseline. So now the scope is baseline. That means management has approved or customer has approved that this is the requirements, this is the scope that they want to get after the project is finished. So that approved scope is known as baseline. So have you understood baseline? In Timebox, we will see three baselines. One baseline is scope related. In a scope chapter, we'll get a scope baseline. Then in the schedule chapter, we'll get schedule baseline. And in the cost chapter, we'll get cost baseline. Baseline means the approved copy of the final cost, final budget, final schedule, and final scope. That means after this, we'll follow this baseline to deliver our project. And in the execution, we'll follow this baseline, scope baseline. We will not deliver more or we will not deliver less. The baseline will define what we need to deliver. All right. So if anything, any change requires related to a scope that is not in the baseline, then as I mentioned earlier, then you have to go for formal change request to do that. All right. So let me discuss about last two processes which are actually under monitoring and controlling process group. So what is control scope? I am actually discussing first the control scope one. Control scope one is, we have set the baseline here, right? We have set the baseline. So now the job of control scope is to deliver as per the baseline, not exceeding the requirements. So we have to follow the baseline to deliver our scope. If we see anything, say we have find out 100 requirements and we have just delivered 90. That means we have delivered 10 less. So control scope will ensure whether we are delivering as per the baseline or not. Is there any extra change, extra element element required for scope? So those things will be controlled in scope management. And also another true important thing you have to understand, control scopes, another responsibility is to control the scope creep. Scope creep. I will detail discuss about scope creep later on. Just remember these two terms. One is scope creep. Another thing is controlling goal plating. Another word, goal plating. So what is goal plating? Goal plating is, say customer asks for this thing, but what we are delivering as a project team, maybe we are delivering extra. This much extra we are delivering. That means we are goal plating. We are delivering extra that is not asked by the customer. So those things are known as goal plating. So in control scope, we have to ensure we are not delivering any extra thing that is not asked by the customer. So these two things is another responsibility of control scope. And control scope is done by the project team. The project team will do this control scope, so that it doesn't exceed the baseline. last process is validate scope. Validate scope. So validate scope means after we have developed all the scopes, or say one iteration you have developed some scope. So that deliverable you have to validate by the customer. You will involve your customer. You will involve your customer to validate that deliverable that you have produced so far. So if customer accept, then what will happen? So that will be accepted deliverable. Customer has accepted. So this validated scope when you will actually involve customer or user. All right. And they will actually validate whether their expectation is met or not as per the baseline. So that will be validated by the customer. So control scope will be done by the project team, the internal team, but validate scope, customer will be involved and they will actually validate. So this thing is the key difference between these two. Control scope is done by our team, our project team, but validated scope is done by customers, users, to validate the deliverables so far we have produced. So this difference you need to understand very clearly. Okay, so if you have any question on this slide, because almost I have taken 15 minutes on this slide. If you have any question, you can ask me now. Do you have any question? Okay, so if not, let me proceed further. Okay, so in Timebox, you will see at the beginning of the chapter, you will see these 6 processes, 5.1 to 5.6. And in a single page, you will see all the inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. So those who want to sit for the exam, so this page, there are 10 pages for each processes. And for each process, you will see each one page for each process. So you have to actually print out this, because quickly you can review seeing this page, what are the inputs, tools, technique, and outputs. That means ITTO for every process of this knowledge area. So this chapter actually consists of 41 pages. 41 pages. So what is the main target of this chapter? As we have already discussed, defining all the work and only the work required to complete the project. And define and control what is and what is not in the project. So that boundary we can set after this scope management. All right. So again, the same thing is mentioned. Okay. At the beginning, I tell you that scope is defined. Scope is divided into 2 types in Timebox. So what are these 2 types and what is the definition of these 2? Let me discuss. So scope is 2 types, divided into 2 types. One is product scope, another one is project scope. So product scope means what? Product scope means the features and functionalities. I am writing here features, all the features and all the functionalities, or all the processes that we want to deliver. That is known as product scope. For example, let me give you an example. For example, you are going to develop a mobile game, mobile app, say mobile game. So in that mobile game, say there will be 30 levels, and each level there will be some fighting with different enemies. So these are the features. There will be 30 levels. There will be different characters who will fight in different levels. After winning a level, if you win a level, then you can
disconnected
to
হয়ে গেল
the next level. So these are the features and functionality of
Maybe net problem.
Sorry, একটা ফোন আসছিল তো। এখন শোনা যাচ্ছে?
হ্যাঁ, এখন শুনতে পাচ্ছি।
শোনা যাচ্ছে।
একটা ফোন আসছিল। আমার মনে হয় মানে ইনকামিং কল বোধহয় বন্ধ করে রাখতে হবে, নাহলে সমস্যা হয়ে যায় যখন কল আসে। So I was actually giving an example about mobile game, right? So in the mobile game, there can be 30 levels. In each level, you will have different characters. You will be the hero and you have to fight and win in each level. If you can win in one level, then you can only go to the next level. So these are the features and functionalities of that game. So these are known as per Timebox, these are known as product scope. But to deliver that product or to develop that game, what we need to do? We need to do coding, right? We need to do graphical work. Then we need to do testing. We need to design. So this work is known as project scope. All right. So if you see this figure, product scope means features and functionality of that product or that game or that mobile app. And to develop that mobile app, the activities we are doing related to project, that work is known as project scope. So in combine, if you combine these two, then that is now known as the scope of the project. So in Timebox, this product scope and project scope is actually distinguished. But in practical life, in our profession, we generally actually don't divide these two. And that actually mentioned here. The term project scope sometimes viewed as including product scope. So when we talk about project scope, that's actually comprised of or consists of both the scope. But as per the definition of Timebox, there is subtle difference between these two. So any question on this slide? Have you understood what is product scope and what is project scope?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this chapter actually talking about requirements management. And what are the trends now? So requirements management actually one of the key factor to make your project successful. So Timebox and PMI has a separate standard on requirements management. Requirements management practice guide. So if you are interested to know and understand detail of requirements management, then you can actually read this book also. But what are the new trend is actually now what you do? Actually, there are some guy in all project teams that we sometimes mention as business analyst. Business analyst. Who is a business analyst? Business analyst is the guy who actually understands the language of the customers and also can interpret or translate that language to the development team. So that middleman, that interpreter is known as business analyst, who understands business as a business, and he also understands to transfer that business language to technology. That person is named as business analyst. So at the beginning of the project, when we are collecting requirements, then that business analyst and project manager and project manager team will work closely to understand the scope, the requirement of the project. Okay. Yeah, Shahid.
স্যার বিজনেস অ্যানালিটিক্স নামে একটা কোর্স আছে স্যার, এই কোর্সটা কি স্যার কোথায় করানো হয় বা এর সাথে কি ইনভলভ আছে, এরকম কি আমাকে একটা ইয়ে করে দিতে পারবেন স্যার কোর্সটার সাথে আপনার পরিচিত?
Business analyst actually first start this. There is a professional certification on business analyst that is actually developed by first IIBA. This is a Canadian institute, International Institute for Business Analysis, IIBA. So they actually first introduce business analysis course, but PMI also having another course that is actually known as PMI PBA. PBA means Professional Business Analyst. And PMI has a separate book on business analyst. So I can share that book with you. And also I have this book from IBA. They have also having a business analyst, a standard for business analyst. That two book I can share with you.
জি স্যার,
Shahid.
জি স্যার, মানে আমি বলতে চাইছি যে বই তো দিবেন স্যার, এইভাবে কি মানে আমি কোনো প্রফেশন কোর্স বা এরকম দিলে একটু ভালো হয় স্যার, পরে তো প্রথম অবস্থায় বুঝতে পারবো না আর কি।
So there are some guys who actually take course on IIBA in Bangladesh. So I will give his name to you so that you can contact. Okay.
ওকে স্যার, থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার।
So in Agile there is no concept of business analyst, but there is a very important role in Agile that is known as product owner. This product owner person, sometimes this guy is not known as business person or business representative, who actually represent the business to the project team. Sometimes he's or she is known as product owner. So product owner actually understand the language of business. All right. So this product owner or business representative, he or she actually collect the requirements, understand the requirements from the customer, and they actually translate or interpret that requirement to the development team or technical team. Then technical team start developing as per their requirement, understanding, and as per the requirement of the customer.
A product owner means manufacturer, something like that.
No. That is a separate. Product owner is actually a term that is used in Scrum. There are a lot of methodologies, almost 100 methodologies or framework to manage project in Agile method. So the Scrum is the most popular framework. In that framework, the person who actually work as business representative is known as product owner. Okay, who understand business, who understand business requirements is known as product owner, not manufacturing. This guy also part of project management team, but he actually understand the business. Okay, let us discuss about tailoring considerations. So knowledge of requirement management is important, as I mentioned earlier. Then validation and control is very important, right? So what happens in, we have seen processes, right? So collect requirements, let me write like this: collect requirements plus what? Define scope, right? Plus what? Create WBS. So these three in the predictive project management, what we do in predictive project management, at the beginning we try to do all these things and we try to set or fix the scope. But in Agile, in every iteration, they actually do every time this thing, because in Agile they actually detail down the scope progressively. That is known as progressively elaboration. So each iteration they actually elaborate the requirements. So in each iteration they do these three processes every iteration. And another two process: control scope and validate scope. Generally in predictive project, predictive means, I think you can remember, sequentially, right? Sequentially we are doing project, that is predictive. And Agile is what? Iteration is going on, iteration. Repeatedly we are doing the activities, iteration and increment. So in Agile or adaptive project, what you do, these two things actually in every iteration, we do this in every iteration. But in predictive project management, generally we do this control scope and validate scope after each phase or at the end of the project. Generally at the end of the project we do. But in Agile projects, What we do these things in every iteration. All right. When we are doing review, when we are doing retrospectives, then we are actually validating and controlling scope. Okay. Let me share this page. I have opened this page. Can you see this page?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
Page number 131. In Timebox, page number 131. So where actually key concept discussed, project scope and product scope. Here, this page is very important to understand. All right, what is the difference between predictive lifecycle and agile lifecycle related to scope management? What happens in predictive project management and what happens in agile projects? That is actually clearly explained here. So please read this book. Give some special focus on this. Nasir bhai, এটা খুব ভালো মতো বুঝতে পারি, page number 131. All right. So if you read this book closely, you can understand what is the difference between two life cycles, predictive life cycle and agile life cycles.
Yeah, thank you, Reza. Thank you.
So before going further, I am actually going to share my white screen. Share my white screen because I need to explain agile process. What happens in agile? So this, I will take 10 minutes, maybe. I will take 10 minutes to explain how agile project management works. And this concept will be helpful to understand all other chapters, especially scope chapter and schedule chapter, cost chapter. What is the relation between the concept of agile project management that actually discussed in every chapter in PMO. So if you understand this is my 10 minutes lecture, that will be very helpful. So I am expecting everyone's concentration now. So what happens in Agile? Agile is time boxed. And first time, please remember, Agile is time boxed. Time boxed means what? Time boxed means every event, every work happen within a time box, time limitation. Maximum you have spent for an event or for an iteration, this maximum time, not more than that. So in Agile project management, everything is time boxed. There is time constraint. Within that time constraint, you have to deliver. If you cannot deliver anything within that time box, that will be removed from the time box. And in the next iteration, we will start with those. All right, but you cannot expand or extend the time box. Okay, so what we do actually in Agile, all the requirements we collect and we put that requirements in a single document. That is the master list document that is named as, let me write here, that is known as backlog. All right, or sometimes known as product backlog. Already I have discussed in Timebox, we are after collecting all the requirements, we are putting the requirements in the requirement documentation, and from the requirement documentation, we are creating a scope statement and WBS. But in Agile, what we do, we collect all the requirements and we put all the requirements in a single document. The name of the document is backlog or product backlog. So all the requirements will be put here in this product backlog. After talking with the customers, and who will collect this? The product owner or the business representative. So then what happens? This product owner, based on the business value, the customer expectation, we actually prioritize this list. That means the top priority prioritized requirement is put at the top. So he set like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are the top ranked requirements. That means customer is asking for these 2 or 3 first, not others. He is actually expecting these 2 first. And these 2 will create most business value. That's why these are ranked top in the backlog. So what happens, as I mentioned in Agile, everything is time box. So what Agile team said, they first set time box for the whole iteration. So one iteration generally happens, the length of iteration generally in the world people practice from 1 week to 4 weeks. This is the maximum. We can use 1 week duration or we can use maximum 4 week duration. So this is the iteration time box. So what we do at the beginning of the iteration, product owner and team leader, that is known as actually Scrum Master. This discussion actually, I am trying to use general terms, but this will be mostly I will use the Scrum terms. All right. So there is a guy, Scrum Master, whose responsibility, there are 3 roles in Agile project, especially in Scrum. One is project owner, another one is Scrum Master, and third one is development team, DT. So in a Agile team, especially in a Scrum, there are 3 categories of roles. One is product owner, one is development team, and another one is Scrum Master. So product owner, as I mentioned earlier, is the business representative who actually understands business, and he can transfer that business to the development team so that they can work. Development team is the main executive body. Executive means who will work. The people who will deliver, who will work for the project, they are actually development team. And a Scrum Master is the servant leader who actually serve product owner, serve development team, and serve the organization so that the organization can smoothly work and manage the Agile processes. So his responsibility is to ensure all the Agile processes, the framework that is chosen, that is actually executed by the whole team. And another responsibility of a Scrum Master is, as a servant leader, he will facilitate, he will train, he will coach, and he will remove any impediments that actually creating any obstacle for the team to develop or to deliver. So that is the responsibility of Scrum Master. So what, say this team decided that they will use 2 weeks iteration, 2 weeks time box. Then at the 2 weeks means what? 10 days, right? 10 days. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So these 10 days, they will, what did they do in the first day? What the team will do? They will discuss with the product owner, and they will select from that list which 1 or 2 or 3 elements they can deliver within this time box. They will not take everything. They will try to select top ranked items from the backlog that those they can develop in this time box. They will not take more than that. All right. So say they have selected 2 items to deliver in this iteration. So in the first day, they will select these 2 and they will detail plan how to deliver this. What they will do, they will actually estimate for these 2 items, what are the works need to do, then who will do what, how much time it will require, how much cost it will require. So that whole planning he will do here in the first day. So after the first day is complete, after planning, they will start working. So when they will work, every day what they will do a small meeting. That meeting name is known as a stand-up meeting. Stand-up meeting. All right, or sometimes it is known as also daily stand-up meeting or daily Scrum. So in this Scrum meeting is also time box. That means the time limit for this meeting will be 15 minutes or less, not more than 15 minutes, not a single minutes extra. That means within 15 minutes, you have to complete the meeting. And this stand-up meeting will happen every day, every day. All right. So every day for 15 minutes, the whole team, Scrum Master, Product and Development team, they will stand together, not sit. They will stand together in circle. And then they will discuss about three things, three agenda. Agenda is also fixed. In Agile, the agenda is also fixed. First agenda is each person will tell what he did in the last day, what work he has done he did in the last day, like yesterday. Then he will tell or discuss in front of everyone that what he is going to do today. What is he going to do today? And third thing, is he facing any blockage, any impediment, or any problem issue that need to solve? That is actually creating blockage to do work. So if there is any impediment, any blockage, that actually creating any obstacle for doing work, that he will actually mention. So these are the three agenda everyone will discuss. All right. So 15 minutes every day they will discuss about these three agenda, and that is known as daily stand-up meeting. And it is also time box. And the planning I have discussed, the 2 items they will select, and for each item they will detail estimate, that also time boxed. That means in a 2 weeks iteration, that will actually not more than 2 to 3 hours, not more than that. So after 2-3 hours, you have to complete the planning session, and you will jump into the work. All right, and every day you will do daily meeting, daily stand-up meeting. Okay, so in this way, you are developing, you are updating every day in daily stand-up meeting. Okay, and at the last stage, in the last day, you have to do 2 things. One is known as review or demonstration, demo or review by the customer. Please remember, this is done by involving customer and product owner and everyone else of the team. So in these 2 weeks, what they have developed, they have taken 2 items, and by this time they have already developed that item. So that real product, real deliverable should be demonstrated or presented in front of the customer. So that is known as review session. So in the last day, for 2 hours or 2 to 3 hours, they will actually give the presentation of the item they have developed in this iteration. And at that time, if there is any requirement change or anything customer is not accepting, or there is some error or anything, then that actually will be find out, and in the next, and that thing will become in the product backlog. And next iteration, after this iteration is completed, in next iteration, this thing will be done. So after 2-3 hours of review or demonstration or presentation, next activity is known as retrospective. Please remember this word, because you will see this word a couple of times in PM board. Retrospective. What is retrospectives? Can anyone say? What is retrospectives? Another simple word is reflecting. Reflect. Reflect means looking back. Looking back. That means follow up. What we have done so far, these 9 days, we have developed these 2 items. We have worked together. So what is our lesson learned from this 10 days activity? How can we improve? Is there any findings? Is there any problem that is actually creating some obstacles? So how we can improve those things in the next iteration, so that it cannot again hamper our development, our work. So this is actually reflecting back in the past, what we have done in last 2 weeks. Is there any 2 things actually done in the retrospective? One is what Sorry, our phone আসছিল, phone আসলে সমস্যা। Okay, so নাসির ভাই কোনটা?
রেট্রোস্পেক্টিভটা আবার একটু যদি শেয়ার করতেন, জাস্ট ডেফিনিশনটা, how it
Right.
works.
Retrospective is actually lesson learned session. In the last week, what went well for us, what went wrong for us, and what are the actions or activities we did which actually did not add any value in our work. So those things we need to identify, and in the next iteration, we will use that lesson learned or good things or our good findings in the next iteration, so that we can do a lot better than the earlier iterations. And if there is anything that actually did not work well, then that we try to improve or change our approach of working work, doing work. Okay, so this is actually lesson learned session. So বোঝা গেছে?
জি, fully understood, thank you.
So in this way, actually, Agile teams work. So what we have learned from here, Agile teams actually very fast. They are delivering very fast to the customers. They are delivering value in after each iteration. All right, and they are actually involving customers in every iteration. All right, and also they are, yes.
Incremental and iterative দুইটা যদি হয় তাহলে কি basic fundamentally is there going to be any change?
Change means?
মানে in terms of product owner, scrum master and the development team, definitely there will be a change in work pattern, but on top of that, is there any fundamental change in terms of how they operate in normal iterative process versus how they do operate in incremental plus iterative process?
Okay, actually, when we are talking about Agile, we are actually thinking that this is actually a combination of both of the life cycle, iteration and incremental. Because what we are doing, incremental means key. What in this iteration time, this 10 days, what we are doing, we are actually doing iteration. That means what we are doing, we are actually collecting requirements, defining a scope, then we are creating WBS and we are producing the increment. After finally we are producing the increment. Before that, actually we are, for iteration, we are ensuring that there is no error. We are doing the correction part also. So after in this everyday's activity, we are doing actually iteration. All right. And finally, after completing this iteration, we are getting one increment. The increment is the final product or some part of the product. That is known as, this term also you should understand, that is MVP, minimal viable product. Right? This term we used to mention or practice use in Agile projects, that is minimal viable product. After each iteration, there should be something which is minimal viable for the customer. And sometimes it is also known as AMF, minimal marketable product, marketable feature, MMF, minimal marketable feature. So after every increment, you will get this. So when you're talking about Agile, we are actually also talking about iteration and increment together actually. And it is happening together. But there, I am actually mainly focusing on Scrum, but there are other processes, other frameworks. So the idea is almost same, but there may be some deviations using the tools and techniques and other things. The idea is almost same. As early as you have to deliver value and you have to involve customers in every iteration, and after iteration complete, you will get a minimal viable product, and also you will get some scope of improvement. That is sometimes also known as Kaizen. Please also remember this term. You will see this term in Timebox, Kaizen. Kaizen means a small improvement. So in every retrospective, the Agile team try to find out some Kaizen, the improvement scope. And that Kaizen is implemented in the next iteration. So one of the beauty of Agile team is every iteration, they are actually trying to improve themselves, improve the team effort, the team performance. So that is another beauty of Agile team.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'm now going back to my slides. All right. So development approach is very important. Development approach means agile, iteration, adaptive or predictive, what we have to use. Based on that, we need to tailor stability of requirements. If the requirements are stable, then maybe we can use predictive life cycle. But if frequent change can come, then it is better to use agile approaches. Governance. If you have any governance already in the organization, you have to follow that. And as I have already discussed, any question?
Basically, if there is any changes in requirement, do they have to follow this the change control board and all this stuff? Will
Yes.
that be happening for the iterative model as well, agile model as well?
Agile model is actually change driven. They are actually always open for change.
Yeah.
So in that case, actually, that is the implied thing. So there is no requirement for formal approval process of change control.
Okay.
All right. The customer and product owner, what they feel good, they can do that. No issues.
Okay. Thank you.
But in predictive process, after baseline, if you want to do anything, any change, then you must get approval from the change control board.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So what we have seen in my last discussion about Agile, that Agile teams are always creating, after every iteration, they are creating to some prototypes or minimal viable product. And they are actually releasing small versions so that customer can give feedback. So their feedback loop is very short. So that is another benefit of Agile, using Agile. The feedback from the customer is very short. In predictive, generally this is very long. So this is another good thing of using Agile project management. And the backlog. So all the requirements constitute backlog in Agile project that I already mentioned. That is known as backlog or product backlog. So let me discuss about plan and scope management. So plan and scope management is what? It is actually planning about the scope management knowledge area. How we are going to do all the processes of this knowledge area. All right, who are going to do, when we'll do that, and what degree of detail will do all the processes of this knowledge area. How we'll collect requirements, how we'll define a scope, how we'll going to divide the scope into WBS, then how we'll throughout the project control scope and validate the scope. That guidance, that framework need to set in plan scope management process. So after doing the plan scope management process, we will get two outputs. One is a scope management plan, the guidance to do all this that I just mentioned. And also another important plan is produced here, that is requirements management plan. Please give a highlight this, because this requirement management plan is not created by a process which have similar kind of name. What I mean by this, that is, the scope management plan is created by plan scope management. And from this process name, we can easily understand the output of the process will be a scope management plan. But requirement management plan, there is no separate process of plan requirements management. There is no process like this. So when we are doing a scope plan, at the same time, we are doing the requirements management plan. So what is the purpose of separate requirements management plan? The main purpose and main importance of this requirements management plan is because requirement is the big thing. If you cannot set the requirements, understand the requirements, identify the requirements of customer, whatever you deliver, a customer will be not satisfied. And what I have shown you, so most of the projects fail because of the not understanding or not collecting or defining the requirements of the customer. So that's why to give more focus on requirements, how we'll do the requirements collection, how we'll put the requirement in the requirement documentation, and throughout the project, how are going to control, update, change all the requirements that is actually written in the requirements management plan. All right. So what are the
if the name suggests that collection requirements output could be requirements management plan, but if you go logically, then it is not going to be the output. But the beginner might think in that manner. I mean, collection requirements output could be requirements management plan. But definitely, the requirement, the collection requirements will be discussing that thoroughly. The output is quite logical. I mean, the documentation and the traceability.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
okay, so this is the important question, very easy and important question. Sometimes it may ask in the exam, requirements management is created by which process? So then it is difficult to answer if you not if you not remember or point out these things, because it is not actually related with any process. All right. There is no separate process to developing this. Okay, so what are the input we are taking? So one input is project charter. Why project charter? So when you are seeing any input or any output in the processes, you need to ask yourself question, why? Why this project charter is here? So what we are going to do, we are going to do project plan scope management. And so far, we are not having other documents in our hand. We are having project charter in our hand. And in the project chapter already, there are separate sections like what will be the deliverables, what will be the high level scope, high level requirements, who will be the stakeholders, then is constraint assumptions. All these things are already in the project charter. So see, deliverable, scope, requirements, stakeholder, all are actually related to scope management. So that's why project charter is input here. Then we'll take some component of project management plan. One is quality management plan, because scope and quality is actually moves hand in hand. So when we are talking about scope, at the same time, sometimes some people actually say scope / quality. That means scope and quality is actually integrated thing. You cannot separate those things. All right. So if you are just giving the as per the scope and you are not giving any quality, ensuring quality, then actually that scope delivery will not be helpful. Customer will not be satisfied. So when we are actually collecting scope, collecting requirements, at the same time, we also need to collect quality requirements also. And that quality requirements will fulfill the scope requirements of the customer. Otherwise, if you don't ensure quality, then customer will not be satisfied getting the scope only. So quality management plan can help us. Project lifecycle description. Lifecycle description means the phase. And lifecycle means what? We divide the project in different phases. So if there are different phases, maybe this will help you. Say some phase you can do in predictive lifecycle, another phase you may use Agile or incremental or iterative lifecycle. So that decision you can take from this project lifecycle description.
Reza bhai, if you go by order, then definitely we have not been introduced with the quality thing yet.
Right.
But for the initial checking and for the benchmarking, we have to consult with the quality management plan here, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And what I have not mentioned that at the initiation stage when doing the project charter, At the same time, we are doing the identify stakeholders. So one of the suggestion is at the same time you have to develop project management plan at high level, not detail, at the high level.
Yes.
So at that high level, you will already have some part of quality management.
Okay.
Planning. So that actually will be used here in the first iteration. Maybe in the second iteration, you will get the detailed quality management plan.
I see. I mean, the stem is coming from there, from the project charter high level thing.
Yes, high level. The project management plan.
Project management plan, yeah.
At the beginning, you have to actually develop the project management plan at high level.
At high level.
Then after doing all the knowledge area, all the planning processes, 23 processes, you will get the detail.
Yes.
But these are actually talking about mostly high level things. For the first iteration, but second iteration, you will get the detail because already your project management plan will be the detail at that time.
Yes.
Development approach, whether we will do it follow predictive life cycle or agile or iterative, that thing actually will help us. Because already I have discussed, if we choose agile, then the thing is all different. But if you choose predictive, then this scope management will look different then. Processes will work differently. And these 2, 3 and 4, we need to always consider when you are doing any kind of planning. Is there any influence from the enterprise environmental factors? And is there any influence or any lesson learned that we have if you did similar kind of projects earlier? So that thing will help you when you're doing the plan scope management. And these 3, in all the planning processes, mostly you will see these 3 as input, as tools and technique. Because we are doing planning. So plan actually, what happens? In planning, we use expert judgment and also alternative analysis. What is alternative analysis? I have already discussed. That means setting or planning plan A, B, C. If plan A is not effective, so that we can easily switch to plan B. So these things we have to analyze. So when always, please remember, when we have to plan anything, just not focus on only one option. Always try to find out other options also, keep other options also. So that if one option doesn't work, you can easily go for the second option. And planning is always meeting. You have to sit with senior guys or who are the experts who can help you for this planning. So you will do meetings with them. All right. So we are getting these 2 things, the scope management plan and requirements management plan. Okay, next, collect requirements. So this process will be the last process for today. So collect requirements is the name. The name is the meaning what? You have to collect requirements. From where? We have from the customers, and also if there are some documents or other available source, then we have to collect requirements for this project. So the name of the process is collect requirements. And what we need to collect? See, there are some category of requirement that we can use for requirement collection. This is very nice. You can use for your practical project management. First, you need to collect business requirements. What is actually business spec? So, for example, if you are going to develop an accounting system for your organization, then you have to understand debit, credit, trial balance sheet, income statement. So what are the business requirements the accounting people or finance people are looking for? That requirements are known as business requirements. So all the related processes, features, functionalities will be part of business requirements. Then stakeholder requirements. That means now you will ask different stakeholders and collect requirements from a stakeholder. And these requirements already, some part of the requirements is already collected where? In a stakeholder register. There is a column, right? In a stakeholder register, we have used a column named requirements from the stakeholders. So that stakeholder register can help you. And also you can do a lot of meetings, workshops, and facilitate workshop. From those or focus group meetings. From those tools and technique, you can collect requirements from the stakeholders. Third one is solution requirements. So solution requirements generally functional two types. One is functional requirements. That means what are the processes, data, and what are the interactions between the processes that you need to identify. At that time, customers can help you to explain their processes. And also you can actually, in project, what we say as is, right? As is process. What are the existing processes that you need to identify? Then we actually define to be processes. After the project, what the process look like, what we are going to deliver, that is actually to be. So that thing, that functional requirement we need to collect. The solution we are going to develop, what are the functional requirements we need. And non-functional requirement, this is very important. Most of the time, maybe customer cannot mention this, cannot say this. What is not non-functional requirement? That is reliability, security, safety, scalability, maintainability. These are the things that is actually non-functional requirements. Okay, so those non-functional requirements as an expert project team, you need to identify. For example, you have delivered functional requirements. You have developed a mobile game, but when you are running the mobile game, the mobile is shut down. The mobile is crashed. So mobile will not be crashed. That is not actually functional requirement. That is actually non-functional requirements. If mobile crashed, then what is the meaning of developing a game which actually crashed the mobile? So those non-functional requirements, as an expert, you have to imply. This is actually implied requirement. So you need to ensure those non-functional requirements. Next requirement is transition and readiness requirements. What is transition requirements? Very important. That means when the product will be developed, you need to deliver that product to operation team or the user or the customer. So when you're delivering these things, then there are some transition requirements from the customer. For example, when you have created a building, say the building is already built, 5-story building is built. Now you will deliver that building to the users who actually purchase the flat. So what will happen at that time? Lot of documentation needed to sign up by the customer, by the user. So, and lot of other things will happen there. So that is actually known as transition and readiness requirements. When you are going to transit the deliverables or output from the project to the users, customers, or operation team, then these requirements you need to comply with, you need to fulfill. That project requirements. So all these are actually what? Related to product requirements, right? But you have to also identify project requirements. What kind of documentation you have to create, who will do the architecture design, then coding, testing, development, all these requirements are the project requirements. And as I mentioned, scope and quality will move hands in hand. So quality requirements you have to identify. What are the quality requirements for this project? All right. Okay, so I will explain this table. Then I will finish for today. So our target is what? Our target is, see, we want to collect all requirements. After collecting requirements, we want to put all the requirements in a document that is known as requirement documentation. In Agile, what is the name of the document? In Agile, can anyone say? In Agile, what is the name of this documentation? সবাই কি শুনতে পাচ্ছেন?
Backlog.
Backlog. In Agile, this requirement documentation is known as backlog. All right. So collecting all the requirements, we are putting all the requirements in requirement documentation. And at the same time, we are actually tracing all the requirements, where from which stakeholder or which document or which meeting we have collected the requirement, that actually for every requirement we trace the requirement from collection to delivery to the customer. That document known as requirement traceability matrix. We want to trace the requirements from collecting or generating the requirements and finally delivering the requirements. So the whole life cycle of the requirements we trace through this requirement traceability matrix document. So this is a great document. If you can use this document, this will be very helpful, especially where the stakeholder change frequently. That will be a helpful document for you.
Reza bhai,
Well,
requirements documentation and the requirements traceability matrix, these are all, I mean, mutually exclusive, right? I mean, under the heading of requirements traceability matrix, requirements documentation will not fall.
no. Those are separate document.
Separate document.
Yeah, separate. All right. So what are the inputs we require? Our target is what? So why I mentioned output first? Can you remember cup of tea? That means our output was to make a cup of tea. So based on that, actually, we try to understand what are the inputs we need. Similarly, when you try to understand a process in PMBOK, if you first see the outputs, then that can help you to understand the inputs and tool techniques. So our output is requirement documentation, where all the requirements will be collected and documented. So where from the requirements we can collect, so that thing will be input. In project charter, already we have high level requirements. So that's why we are taking project charter as input. Then a scope management plan. Please remember, when in a knowledge area, when we have complete the first process, that is plan scope management or plan schedule management or plan cost management, after the plan is created, that means scope management plan for this knowledge area, this plan will be always input for all other processes of this knowledge area. That means in collect requirements, you will see scope management plan, because here we have already set the guideline, how will this do this collect requirements. In define a scope, in create WBS, validate a scope, control a scope, everywhere this will be input. All right. So just remember generic guideline. Once you have do the first planning process of a knowledge area, that planning process output will be used as input in every other processes of that knowledge area. Okay, that is a generic guideline. Okay. Then requirements management plan. The same two, these two things actually develop in the last process. Stakeholder engagement plan, where it is developed in a stakeholder knowledge area, right? Then assumption log, lesson learned from earlier projects. If we did similar projects earlier, that lesson log can help us to collect requirements. Then a stakeholder register, right? So this is key input, stakeholder register, because already we have collected some requirements from stakeholders in that document. So this is a major or key input for this process. Business case, right? Business case, already we have seen in business case, we have written justification, the description of the project. So this document will be helpful for collecting requirements, business case. Then agreements. Agreements means if you are a vendor, right, or supplier, then contract document or TOR document or SOW will be the main document to understand the requirements of the project. All right. So that's why agreement we are taking as input. And these 6 and 7, as it is actually under planning process group. So I have already mentioned in all the planning process groups, you see these are the inputs, because you have to understand influence on this process from these two factors. Okay. So what are the tools? Very interesting tools for collect requirements. And most of the tools we have already use, practically we use those who have some experience in project management. I am 100% sure that you have some experience with these tools. Maybe we don't know the name of the tools, but already you have used these tools. Because what is our target? Our target is to use these two techniques to collect requirements, to understand requirements from the customer. So what tool first we can use? Expert judgment, right? Expert judgment is a generic tool. Then we have data gathering tools. Data gathering means requirement collection means what? Data gathering. So what can we use? Brainstorming. Already discussed, right? We have to give our idea, generate our idea. And we can use brainwriting, brainstorming, right? So using those tools, we can collect requirements. Most generic tool that most probably we have all used, everyone we have used, that is interview. Interview means asking questions to the stakeholders. That can be, I've already mentioned, one-to-one. As a requirement collector, you are going to meet the stakeholder one personally and getting collecting requirement personally. Today actually I am going to do this job, this interview in Pani Union Board, Bangladesh. And I have actually met several guys to collect requirements from them. All right. So today actually I explain this. So this interview with the stakeholders can be one-to-one, can be one-to-many, can be many-to-many, right? So the main target is asking questions to understand the requirements of the stakeholders. So this is the most generic tool that every one of us most probably already used. Focus groups. Focus group means, so if we gather everyone of different interests or different interest groups, then it is actually tough to get the focus requirements from that group. So what we do, we actually say, for example, in an ERP project, you know, in an ERP project, there are several modules like HR module, right? Like accounting module, then logistic module, right? Then marketing module, sales module. So what can I do through focus groups meetings? Say today we will actually collect requirements about HR related issues. HR policy, HR process, we need to understand. So today's focus is to understand only HR functionalities, features, processes, procedures. So what can we do? We can actually only call upon all the related guys, subject matter expert of HR. All right, and there will be a mentor or facilitator from our side who will actually facilitate that focus group meeting and try to collect from that subject matter expert and focus group to understand the HR policies, procedure, and processes. So that is known as focus groups. All right, so throughout the project, maybe we will do a lot of focus group meetings to understand a particular area of interest of the stakeholders. Next is questionnaire and survey. We have already seen this, right? If audience size is big, then generally we create questionnaire and survey. Then using those tools, we collect requirements, collect the expectation from the stakeholders. We have already seen this in a stakeholder chapter. Benchmarking, we have already seen. If there is some standard, say we are going to develop Uber-like product, Uber or Pathao. So what do we do then? Yes. So Pathao, what they do, they actually try to follow that benchmark set by Uber. All right. So that is actually benchmark. If there is already some standard set by someone, that can help us to collect requirements or understand requirements. Next, document analysis. This is another very generic tool. When you start a project, what do? We try to collect all the documents from the stakeholders. So after reading or studying or analyzing or exploring the document, we can understand the requirements. For vendor side, what do? We closely read the talk or the agreements to understand the requirements of the stakeholders. So that is known as document analysis. Voting. voting, we have already discussed about voting. So there are 4 categories of way that we can use for decision making as a voting technique. So number one is unanimity. And let me write using text. Unanimity. Unanimity. Second one is majority. Third one is plurality. Plurality. Okay. And fourth one is autocratic. So these 4 techniques we can use for what? To make decisions. So what all these 3? These 4. Please remember, you will get 1-2 questions from these 4 category, voting category. So you have to understand each of these voting technique. So this actually falls under this voting. You will have separate slide for this, but now I am discussing here. So what is unanimity by unanimity? That means if 100% stakeholders or the participants give vote for one thing, everyone is agreed or not agreed. 100% people is agreed or not agreed of one decision, then that is unanimity or unanimity. যেটাকে আমরা বাংলায় বলি সর্বসম্মতিক্রমে, ঠিক আছে? সর্বসম্মতিক্রমে, তার মানে 100 জনের কাছে ভোট দিচ্ছে, 100 জনই বলছে হ্যাঁ ইয়েস আমরা এটা চাই, তাহলে হবে সর্বসম্মতিক্রমে। আবার 100 জনই যদি বলে না, তাহলে কি হবে?
সর্বসম্মতিক্রমেই হবে।
Right, that is also unanimity. So in the exam, maybe you can see this type of question. Everyone disagreed. Then what technique used? So as people, most of the people are positive minded, so always think the positive thing. So as everyone has not disagreed, then that answer will be different. No, positive we are looking, yeah, right. So 100% vote is in one side, that means সর্বসম্মতিক্রমে, unanimity. So that is unanimity. Majority means what? Majority is more than 50%. Maybe you have not get 100% vote on one side. Maybe you have got some people given vote 30%, 20%, 10%, 50%. You have to see majority people voted on which side. So that you choose. So that is majority. So at that time, you will is actually majority, when actually unanimity is not working, because we are not getting 100% vote. So we are taking actually majority vote, which side is the majority vote. Then you will, if this technique you use, then that is known as majority. Third one is plurality. Plurality means you have not get 100% vote, and also you have not get 50% vote. So no technique, these 2 techniques are not applicable here, because maybe this happens, say 40% people voted for one thing, then 30% in another thing, and maybe 10% in another argument, and maybe 10% did not vote for anything. So how will decide? Because here actually unanimity is not working, even majority is not working, because we are not getting more than 50% vote. So what we can choose? We can use plurality. That means 40%, the maximum vote in which side or which argument. So that will select. That is known as plurality. All right. So these 3 techniques you have to understand. And last one is autocratic. Autocratic is outside of this technique. Autocratic means what? I am myself taking decision and imposing that decision to others. I am the boss, so I decide this will happen. This is my decision. You have to take that decision. So that is actually autocratic. So that is not good for project. So project, you have to try to get everyone's involvement and get the consensus from the team. So if you can get the consensus, then you can get the buy-in. The team can work together and the team bonding will be good. So autocratic you will not try to use actually. You always try to use other three techniques. Multi-categorization techniques we have already discussed. Mind mapping already discussed mind mapping, right? Then affinity diagram. Affinity diagram means affinity means what? In Bangla we can say ashokti. That means when you're collecting requirements, after collecting requirements, graphical data representation means what? Graphical presentation. If we categorize those requirements in categorically, say hardware requirements we are putting under hardware, we are putting process related requirements here, and maybe we are putting says people related requirement here. So under hardware you may need network equipment, you may need a switch, you may need cables. So collecting the requirements and categorizing those requirements in different categories, that is known as affinity diagrams. So related items we are putting one category. Again, other related items, those are actually related to process that we are putting here. And other requirements that are related to people, we are putting all the items under people, depending on the relevancy. So this is known as affinity diagram. তার মানে যে রিকোয়ারমেন্ট গুলো আসক্তি যেদিকে আছে তার সাথে আমরা ট্যাগ করে দিচ্ছি সেই that graphical representation is known as affinity diagrams. So already 9:30. So we have seen this far. So next class we'll start from number 6. So there are actually almost 16 tools and techniques. 16 tools technique. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Total 16 tools and technique here. And from each tools and technique, you may get one question in the exam. So you have to clearly understand all the tools and techniques. And also you have to understand in which situation, which tool and technique will be more effective. That also you have to understand. So for today, we are closing our class.